people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Ahead of her upcoming undisputed super lightweight contest against undisputed welterweight champion Jessica McCaskill, Chantel Cameron says her ability to adapt will be too much for Jessica McCaskill. Who knows?
One thing and only one thing.
And you know, they actually have some history. According to Chantel, it goes way back. It goes back to when I turned professional. I'd had 5 fights, and she had just boxed Katie Taylor. Her and her coach, Rick Ramos, were on Twitter doing what they do best, ranting and raving and trying to get the fight. And I wanted to fight her then, but I was with a different team back then, and they didn't want me to go down that route. They wanted me to fight Maiva Hamadouche, Delphine Persoon. They were the sort of opponents they were looking at instead. Obviously, McCaskill then went on to win world titles at 140 pounds, and I want to fight to become her mandatory, so I thought I would end up fighting her.
Chantel was with the now defunct Cyclone Promotions and Shane McGuigan, Barry McGuigan.
If you're wondering why those plans to take on a Delphine Persoon or a Maiva Hamadouche didn't come into fruition, that would be the why, that would be the reason. Eventually, Chantel parted ways with that team.
They had their differences and they parted ways rather unamicably.
We talked about that here on the channel years ago. So, I thought I would end up fighting her. We planned on fighting McCaskill about 2.5 years ago, but she vacated and ended up fighting Cecilia Brækhus. I knew then our paths wouldn't cross, but now, thankfully, they have. It's happened at the right time as well, because if we had boxed back then, when I first turned professional, it would have only been for an IBO belt. Even when McCaskill won the WBC title at 140 pounds, it wouldn't have been a big fight. Now, though, we're both boxing for the undisputed title. We're both going to get the maximum out of this fight.
She's right, you know, it wouldn't have been a big fight back then, but it's a much bigger fight now than it was before.
Both fighters are a lot more experienced now than they were then. Chantel Cameron pried the IBF title away from then reigning champion Mary McGee of America.
She thoroughly outpointed former IBF 2 division champion Victoria Bustos.
Pitched a complete shutout in her last outing earlier this year. Jessica's accolades, she beat the then reigning WBC super lightweight champion Erica Farias. She then beat the WBA champion Anaí Sanchez, moved up in weight and beat Cecilia Brækhus, and more recently, she retired Mexico's own Alma Ibarra.
Jessica's on fire, man.
It was her style, Cameron said when asked to pinpoint what made the American such an appealing potential opponent. I really respect her style. I think she's a great fighter. She's tough. She's stubborn. She's an opponent that excites me. I think we can put on a great show for the fans. She'll be there until the end and is relentless. It was a fight I wanted to be a part of. I think our styles will make a really good, fan-friendly fight. That's why I'm looking forward to it and why I've wanted this fight for a long time.
Jessica McCaskill's a pressure fighter and Chantel Cameron's a boxer puncher.
And the way that normally breaks down, so long as both fighters are on the level, is the boxer puncher has a stylistic advantage over that pressure fighter.
That's why Chantel says that Jessica knows one thing and only one thing.
Pressure fighters aren't the least bit subtle. Jessica McCaskill certainly isn't. You know exactly what you're going to get from Jessica. I think that's his style, Cameron said of Ramos. He likes to be loud and active on social media. The impression I get is he likes to stir the pot a little bit and trash talk, but for me, it's strictly business. I'm not going to be on Twitter going back and forth, all that he said, she said. Coaches talking a lot on Twitter and Instagram is madness. They're not going to be the ones in the ring fighting. They're supposed to just get their fighter prepared. They don't need to be bitching on Twitter. I think it's a bit silly, really, but everyone has their own style. I'm just glad Jamie Moore and Nigel Travis aren't like that. They never get into any spats on social media, and I'm the same. We're all very professional.
Well, I do think that Rick stirs the pot, but it's because Rick isn't just a coach. He's also Jessica's manager.
And he's managed to make his fighter not just a 2-division unified unified champion, but a two-division undisputed champion. Undisputed at welterweight.
Formerly unified at junior welterweight. Now she's looking to become undisputed there with Chantel Cameron.
He's multitasking is what he's doing. He might seem like a thorn in Jessica's opponent's ass, but he's actually doing right by his fighter, doing everything he's been doing, because everything he's been doing has gotten her here to this point. Chantel says, I don't got a grudge against Jessica. I respect her for what she's done. She has had a good career. On my side, there's only respect. But they may try to push my buttons. I don't know. They're going to be arguing with themselves if they do. I don't rise to it. I won't get into all that. If they want to overlook me, that's their problem. But I'm not overlooking Jessica. I know I have a tough fight on my hands, and it's strictly business for me. I won't be on Twitter going back and forth. For me, it's a must-win fight. I don't have the energy for all of that. All the energy I have will be going into training to make sure I have the best performance of my career.
It is true, for the most part, Chantel Cameron's social media presence isn't really felt. She's not there very much.
And outside of a brief Twitter war many months ago that Chantel Cameron had with Sandy Ryan on Twitter, you don't really see Chantel trading barbs with anybody on social media. She doesn't like it.
She lets her fists do the talking. That's how she is.
I think she'll be surprised when she feels how strong I am, said Cameron. I also think I'm a better boxer. I'm faster, I'm sharper, and I've got game A, game B, game C, whereas she knows one thing and one thing only. That's quite easy for me to figure out. I can mix it up and change game plans, but I don't think she has that in her toolbox.
Like I said, so long as both fighters are on the level, the boxer-puncher actually has a stylistic advantage over the pressure fighter.
Because the boxer-puncher often alternates between offense and defense. They have a good balance of the two. The pure boxer that likes to fight on the outside, they try their best to keep it a boxing match, and you really can't do that with a pressure fighter. There are going to be moments where you have to assert yourself, and you have to fight them off. You can't spend the whole fight on the move.
After a while, to the judges, it's just going to look like that pressure fighter's outworking you, and you're running away.
Whereas the boxer-puncher, unlike the pure boxer, the boxer-puncher asserts themselves when necessary against that oncoming aggressor, that pressure fighter.
Jessica McCaskill's a pressure fighter. Chantel Cameron's a boxer-puncher.
Boxer-puncher with an unblemished record of 16 wins, no losses, no draws.
8 knockouts.
To Jessica McCaskill's 12 wins, 2 losses, and no draws.
5 knockouts.
Now, even though Jessica has less knockouts than Chantel, I'd wager that Jessica's actually the stronger puncher of the two, but Chantel is the better boxer.
6 or 7 years younger than Jessica. Chantel's 31, Jessica's 38.
Set to go down on the undercard of Bivol versus Ramirez. You heard what Chantel said. She's not for trading barbs, and she ain't for the grab-assing. She's all business.
She knows exactly who she's dealing with. The question is, can she handle it?
Being completely honest with you, there really is only one way to find out. Men's super lightweight news. Rick Merrigan took to social media this past Friday and said, today is it. We find out if the deposit was left by Marv Nation for Chung Zepada versus Regis Prograis, who returned 0 calls, messages, etc., or if the PBC will get the fight now and get this thing done. As of yesterday, there was no confirmation from the WBC.
Sounds strange that Marv Nation won that purse bid, but apparently they wouldn't return Rick's calls. Rick represents Chung Zepada in all of this.
Marv Nation won the purse bid for this fight over a week ago with a whopping $2.4 million bid. 2 times as much as TGB Promotions was willing to put up. TGB, which is just another way of saying PBC.
To everyone's surprise, boxing scribe Dake Jonovan tweeted,
WBC President Mauricio Suleiman confirmed receipt of 10% deposit to 140,000 lodge required by Marv Nation from purse bid for Jose Zapata versus Regis Prograis vacant 140-pound title fight. Date and location still to be announced, though event will move forward, must take place no later than November 28th per purse bid terms. And if it don't go down on the 28th, the people at Marv Nation will be found in default, at which point the rights to the fight will then go to the second highest bidder, the second highest bidder being Tom Brown of TGB Promotions, which is just another way of saying Al Heyman and the PBC.
$2.4 million for a fight like this is a rather aggressive bid. You could argue that Marv Nation paid too much for this fight.
Well, I know that the fighters and their managers might be happy that the pot is such a big pot, such a generous pot, but it's almost too good to be true. And don't be fooled. just because Marv Nation deposited the 240 large,
Which is 10% of the overall pot. 240,000 is 10% of 2.4 million.
just because they made the deposit doesn't mean it's all smooth sailing from here. Triller, they had the deposit for the Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos fight when they won the purse bid for that, but we see how long that drug out. We see how all of that turned out. They just wasted a lot of time.
They ended up being found in default, and the rights went to Matchroom, the second highest bidder of that purse bid.
And what you'll notice in that situation, unlike this one, is whether you're talking about Triller or you're talking about Matchroom, who eventually got the rights for the fight, they both have platforms. I mean, Triller has its own platform, and so does Matchroom. Now, Triller wanted to bill Kambosos versus Lopez as a pay-per-view, and that's what I'm hearing about this fight between Jose Zapata and
Regis Prograis.
common denominator in both of those purse bids and both of those situations is that the winning bid was exorbitantly big, perhaps too big, too good, almost too good to be true.
Business-wise, it didn't make any sense for Triller to bid $6 million for Lopez versus Kambosos. That's not a $6 million fight.
Triller, who were trying to carve out their own lane in the sport of boxing, tried to integrate themselves as a force in the sport. Perhaps they didn't understand that the market value of that fight ain't $6 million, and if you throw $6 million at it,
How the hell are you supposed to get it back? Even if you put it on pay-per-view, people might not think that's pay-per-view worthy.
people at Triller, they were greenhorns, wet behind the ears, newbies to the sport, and perhaps they didn't realize that $6 million, that's not the market value of a Lopez versus Kambosos fight, whereas Marv Nation, they're acquainted with the sport. They've staged their own shows for some time now over there on the West Coast, and they have to know that good fight that this might be, Prograis versus Zapata, is it really a $2.4 million fight?
Tom Brown didn't think so. He bid half what they bid.
Tom Brown, people over there at the PBC, they actually have a broadcast partner that gives them a budget. They have a network behind them. Marv Nation doesn't. So why is Marv Nation bidding 2 times as much as a promoter that actually has a broadcast deal when they don't?
I got nothing against Marv Nation and them trying to grow and expand their business, but it is peculiar.
Questions that need answers. When exactly do they plan on doing this fight? And when they do it, what platform is going to show it? Is it going to be a pay-per-view? Because that's what I'm hearing. Has Jose Zapata already started camp for this thing? Has Regis Prograis?
You ain't got a broadcast partner, but you're putting up 2 times as much money as somebody that does.
Where the hell did you get that kind of money? You're doing local shows over there on the West Coast. All of a sudden, you got millions of dollars to throw around, millions of dollars to throw at a fight?
And even if you have millions upon millions of dollars stuffed under your mattress,
And you're willing to put them up for this fight, that still don't represent the commercial value of this fight. So why are you trying 2 times as hard as a Tom Brown or a Zanford Promotions to get the rights to this thing when you ain't even got a broadcast partner?
this makes no sense business-wise in the business sense of the word, but this is the situation. This is what's going on.
We're in September, you understand. We're well into September, and the people at Marv Nation have until late November to get this fight over the line. That's approximately a little over 2
No
months.
official fight date has been announced. No official location.
You've just staked $2.4 million on this thing. You've got to ramp up promotion in order to sell it.
How the hell are you going to do that with no official date, no official venue?
It's a strange situation. It's a curveball. That's what it is. They're supposed to ramp up promotion for this thing somehow, though I don't really understand how they're going to do that because they don't have a broadcast deal. They're going to promote this thing where?
On what platform to what audience?
Worst comes to worst, they can't deliver by the deadline. They're found in default. The rights go to Tom Brown. But the fighters' and their managers' time, will have been wasted by all of this.
And you know, time is the one thing when you lose it, you don't get it back.
We'll see what happens. In other men's super lightweight news, per tweet from Michael Benson, Bob Arum has told reporters that he now expects Josh Taylor versus Jack Catterall's rematch to potentially take place in January.
Their first fight took place in February of this year.
Neither man has seen action since then. Josh Taylor took time out to get married. Jack Catterall, he took time out to sign to Pro Bellum and then signed to Sky Sports and Boxer.
I feel like if not for this rematch, Jack Catterall might have returned to action in a rebound fight.
It hasn't really been a productive year for either man's career, especially not Josh Taylor. Josh Taylor, who spoke on his exchanges with Jack Catterall after their fight, I don't don't regret anything. They gave me the role of the bad guy, so I just turned heel and played it. I'm happy to play it.
I don't give a monkey's ass. I don't care what anybody thinks.
If these two end up having their rematch in January, as Bob specified, that will have been approximately 11 months' time since their initial meeting. That's just 1 month shy of a year. Josh Taylor, who is said to be busting at the seams, squeezing down to 140 pounds. The only thing he has left of his undisputed title reign is the WBO title. 3 of the other titles have since gone vacant after this fight.
Josh Taylor, who's been averaging 1 fight a year for the last 3 years.
Only fought once in 2020, only fought once in 2021, and he's only fought once this year. Not much of a difference for Jack Catterall. He's fought even less in the last 2 or 3 years. He only fought once in 2020, skipped out all of 2021, and he boxed Josh Taylor earlier this year, made the most of the opportunity. A lot of people felt he deserved the decision, but he didn't get it. Not in Josh's neck of the woods.
And that's what Josh Taylor hopes to settle in the rematch. He hopes to settle the score and silence the critics.
He says he doesn't give a monkey's ass. He says he doesn't care what anyone thinks, but if that were true, he wouldn't be fighting this guy again. He knows what a lot of people think. He knows what they're saying. They're saying that Jack Catterall deserved to win that fight, and he wants to run it back. Perhaps beat this guy in better fashion, if he can. Though 11 months out from their initial meeting, neither man having seen action, and Josh Taylor potentially struggling to make the 140-pound limit.
Remember, they were saying this was going to be his last fight at 140 pounds, that he was going to move up in weight.
The trajectory of Josh Taylor's career has changed dramatically. Remember back when Terrence Crawford was still on the top-ranked side of things, the proposed plan was for Josh to move up in weight and take him on for his WBO title.
Yeah.
All of those plans are scrapped. Public perception of Josh Taylor is in the crapper. Fall from grace.
Josh Taylor was once regarded as one of the best boxers in the world.
Scotland's first undisputed champion in the four-belt era, a pound-for-pound fighter in his own respect. And that reputation and those accolades, that regard, that high esteem he was held in. He's not held in high esteem anymore, but he can perhaps salvage.
He's sacrificed quite a bit to get this guy back in the ring, and I don't think it's because he doesn't care what people are saying, what people think. He cares.
If he didn't, he would have moved on with his career. But he's revisiting this fight with this fighter. And the silver lining, the saving grace, is that this fight now has more of a profile than it did before.
Controversy can do that. Controversial outcomes can have that effect in the sport of boxing.
Because he didn't look himself in his last fight, it's not actually a foregone conclusion that Josh Taylor can do better in the rematch, especially having sat out the last 11 months ahead of what's supposed to be the rematch.